Do we have too much government?
We need to put people ahead of corporate profits.
This system is so lopsided. This threat is a real threat to democracy.
And I think that's really important. That's something we haven't been doing in this country for a long time.
Where do you start? What do you do? How do you do it?
Access to Democracy and other Eagan community television programming is supported by Thomson Reuters, makers of Westlaw Next and based in Eagan. Through Westlaw Next and other innovative online services, Thomson Reuters is the world's leading source of intelligent information for businesses and professionals. Online at thomsonreuters.com. And by U.S. Federal Credit Union, the member-owned financial institution offering service, value, and experience you can trust to the greater Twin Cities community.
Hello, welcome to Access to Democracy. My name is Rick King. I'm one of the co-hosts today, along with Paul Andreson, retired Chief Associate Justice of, that was a mistake one of our governors made, by the way, not making you the chief, but Associate Justice on the Supreme Court of Minnesota. Paul and I are here today to interview a certain host of this program regularly, Alan Miller. Alan, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Welcome to your program.
Thank you so much.
Now,
I am so nervous.
Are you?
No.
I wouldn't think so. Let's see. There's two remarkable numbers that strike me right off the bat. One is that the reason we're doing this is your 80th birthday just passed.
My second 40th, yes.
Yeah, second 40th. The other remarkable number, and I think that we can work both these in, there's over 1,600 shows that you've done for Access to Democracy. That's pretty amazing. So I figure you've done 20 a year for every year of your life. And I don't know which year you started, but that's a pretty amazing total.
You know, we started here by accident. I was on the Telecommunications Commission when we had one here in the city. And someone had scheduled an interview with a young legislator by the name of Tim Pawlenty, and then had to pull out at the last minute. And they asked me, can you do it? Because I had done some television back east. And I said, I'll give it a try. And we actually got through a half an hour. And I asked Sharon for a critique, and she said, you were terrible. So
Sharon's your wife, right?
Yes.
Your enabler, the one that makes you, that allows you to do all these marvelous things.
And who has, since she retired from Thomson Reuters, has shared in the production of this also with me.
Which is fantastic. I mean, it's good to do something like that together. And she's usually behind the camera, right? Whether it's a still one or she's in the control room.
She takes
today.
the stills and she's in the control room. We can't get her on camera.
Well, we're going to try to break that today because, as you can see down here, we've got, what did you call it, the 2 times 40 birthday?
Yeah.
So we have the 2 times 40 birthday cake here. So we're going to invite Sharon in to help us cut it, but one can never tell if she'll do this or not, right? She's avoided the camera for 1,600 shows so far.
She, yes, she has actually, and we've shot a couple of specials, including Katrina. We went down after Katrina into New Orleans. She actually handled the camera for that. We've been on the field at the old Twins Stadium, the Metrodome, and I think she did some camera for that, but she won't get in front of the camera for reasons unbeknownst to me.
Of course, but there's people like that, and there's people that are the face when on the camera, and that seems like totally your style. Tim Pawlenty, so that was an interesting start. Tell us a little bit about how you didn't have much time to think about it because you substituted for somebody.
Well, I had a couple of days to prepare questions.
Okay.
I checked out his voting record and things like that, and it was a fair interview, but he was very polished. I was not, and of course, we followed him in the legislature. He's an Eaganite, and then he became the majority leader, and then ultimately he became the governor, and we've had him back.
He was one of
times.
He was one of the Republicans that came back, and you've had some Republicans who either won't come to the show or have come once and decided not to come back. Despite the views, I mean, you interview them no matter which they lean, and challenge them, I think, and you've been always very fair, I believe.
I've tried, but if people are uncomfortable explaining why they voted for something, which is not to say that I won't joust with them, but I do that with all of my guests. I'll do that with you. I'll do that with Paul.
Well, this actually perplexes me a bit that some guests don't want to come back, because my colleagues on the court, I mean, we do the spectrum, and you've always treated them fair. And David Strauss, is the more conservative. He has fun on your show, and
we do have fun, and most people, I hope, have fun. And the ones who have refused to come back are few and far between.
Right.
Now, Norm Coleman, I understand why Norm doesn't want to come back, because the last time he was here, and of course he moved further and further and further to the right during his political career, I managed to find a couple of photographs of him when he was a student at Hofstra, where I taught years ago, and he led the ADA, I believe it was the ADA, that took over the administration building, and they commandeered the administration building, and they were waving flags up there, and I found a couple of photos from that. And so I asked him, how did he drift so far to the right? And he took umbrage at that.
See, I don't think that's a judgment question. Do you, Paul? I mean,
that's a fair question. You never give anybody heads up about the questions. I mean, what you're going to ask me, and you say, well, that's for me to know and you to find out. But this is something that's interesting, because people change over lives, and you are what you are. And you shouldn't deny. I mean, I was more conservative when I started out, and morphed a little bit into a moderate to a little left of center. But
you were pretty much a middle-of-the-road Republican.
Eisenhower Republican. You know why that is?
Appointed by a Republican governor also.
But I'm a Lincoln Republican. See, that's just family tradition, comes out of. But that's, I want to say, is that I've always found you fair. If I've written an opinion you don't disagree with, you probe me on it and push me a little bit. And I saw you do that with some of my colleagues, but you were fair in allowing them to explain what's the theory and philosophy behind the decision. So I like that.
One of the great things is the cooperation I've had from the Supreme Court and the other courts here, because, and I have to say that about the elected officials also. Whether it's the governor, who appeared here first when he was a senator, and has appeared several times since, or Al Franken and Amy Klobuchar are our U.S. senators. Now, the last time Al Franken was here, and he hasn't been here for 2 years because of his schedule, we went a half an hour, and we finished. He was the third interview of the day. We usually do 3 every other Friday. And he said, well, we have much more to talk about. Can we do another half hour? And we did. How often do you get an opportunity to sit one-on-one with a United States senator and talk about the country, talk about the world, talk about philosophy? And what a great boon that is, I think, for the people who are our viewers, because usually it's 10-second sound bites or 30 seconds at most.
Right.
And
long-form journalism, actually long-form journalism.
And that's the great thing that this program has enabled me to do.
It's kind of scary coming on an interview show with someone who's you're a native New Yorker, right?
Yes, and we even say in the New York.
New York,
yes.
Huh? So how'd you wind up here in Minnesota?
Well, when I was a freshman in college, my father got transferred to a store here by the name of Bautel's.
Oh, I remember.
And we lived all over the country. I must have lived in 8 places by the time I was 16. And when they moved to Minneapolis, it was between semesters. I took the train to Chicago from Syracuse, where I did both undergraduate and law.
You are a lawyer, right?
Not any longer.
But you are.
Trained
You're educated.
Trained as a lawyer, right?
Trained as a lawyer.
Yeah.
And So I got here in January, and it was like 20 below, and I had to take a streetcar to where they lived. I got off at the wrong stop. I had to walk 2 blocks with a suitcase, and I had a little bit of frostbite on an ear. And I said, if I ever get the chance, I'm going to come back to this, because this is where it's at. And so
Doesn't quite tie together for
No,
me.
it doesn't. It doesn't.
Maybe there's something in it. Keep going.
I started with West Publishing
Yeah.
in '85, and then Thomson bought West in '96, '95,
Yeah.
and they dissolved I guess that's the word you would use. They globalized the New York office, whatever. A few of us had the opportunity to come out here. Sharon was there at the time. In fact, I met Sharon while working at West. And we said, the kids are grown, let's take the adventure. It's a nice place to live. Minnesota really has a good quality of life. New York doesn't anymore, as far as I'm concerned, albeit that we have our children and grandchildren living there. And we did. Then Reuters came in, and then it became Thomson Reuters, and
But this is something I want you to, I did some interviews when you did it at the other studios over there.
right.
And I was actually a little concerned when you said you were going to be moving to the Thomson Reuters building. That's where we are now.
Yes.
And I've been delighted as at how Thomson Reuters has made it so easy for your guests up here. But what's the move like for you? I mean, you've been here now how many years?
This is our 4th year here. And actually, if it wasn't for Rick King and our former administrator in the town, in the City of Eagan, Tom Hedges, we wouldn't be here. But they were presented with the opportunity to have a public-private partnership, and they both saw the benefit of it. And the fact of the matter is, Thomson uses it with City of Eagan employees. We use it, and it's been beneficial, and I think financially beneficial to both.
I think it has.
So what drove you on this, Mr. King, to do this?
Oh, well, first of all, I think that it's a need. So you look at, our need was to have a higher quality video production capability to be able to talk to a global workforce. And so we had a capability, but we were looking at advancing that. And it costs money to get all the good equipment, and then you don't use it all the time. Then I hear that, I had appeared a few times with Alan and when we were in Burnsville, and when they said they were going to dissolve it, and Burnsville was going to go move theirs to Burnsville High, and I thought, well, where's Eagan going to move theirs? And well, we're going to maybe this and maybe that, and thought, well, we have room in our downstairs area, and if we can figure this out, you're going to have certain equipment and hours, and we could share the equipment, and if the hours work, we both get the same. We both get better equipment and enough hours for a cheaper price, and it worked out that way. The hardest part wasn't that part, to figure that out. It actually was to construct an agreement with the most agreeable and good guy in the world, Tom Hedges. It wasn't any bad faith in there, but it hadn't been done. And everybody wants to check what all the nuances are. Is there any statute against it? How will the funds work? How does this work? And by the time you go through the ringer, you have to have persistence when you're working with government agencies. But there was a prize at the end, and the prize was a better facility for both. And to
The fact of the matter is that you got it done in 4 months.
well, that's
You built this wonderful studio, and the city came in with the equipment. And
Right.
probably it's a,
We have great
it's $1
people.
million operation, but
Yeah.
it really is. Most other cable television operations are really jealous for what we have here.
But the thing that I like the most, and then we get back to Alan, this sort of ties in, so many of the facilities that a government will build or private industry will build are shareable. The only thing that's in the way of that is creativity of the minds of the leadership. And when you think about it, it's even novel, and I went to some award ceremonies where 2 cities shared a dump. And that was viewed as a really big deal. And I just think to myself, well, yeah, you don't each need one. And there's so many things like that. Could you share a rec center? Could you share a pool? Could you, whatever? And it's certain communities it would work fine. Well, let's open that up broader. Let's think broader, and bring government into the businesses, bring business into the government. There is nothing bad that's going to happen if everybody is above board about that. And to me, that brings people into the government, and they see that the people do good work, and that's another way to access democracy, to go back for the purpose of your program is to open it up so everybody has a better understanding of what's in front of them. And speaking of that, whatever drove you to sustain this? Somebody said, Tim Palente, we need an interview, and you said, yeah, you did it, and you did all your homework, but you've got 1,600.
And I was terrible.
Well, so you wanted to get better.
That's exactly right. I am a very competitive
So that drove
person.
you for a long time?
And I said, I'm not going to be satisfied with this opinion, evaluation that I was terrible. I want to be a little bit better than terrible. So I've worked hard. Now, my lawyer's background has been really helpful in terms of research. I do a tremendous amount of research for each interview. Probably 3 times as much as I need for the interview, but that way I never run out of questions in case I hit a guest who freezes up.
Well, I learned that. You come up with a list of cases, and then you start asking me about specifics on those cases, so I know you do your research.
And that's enabled me to get better, and that's enabled the show to be a better show.
Mm-hmm.
And we have hit just about every gamut possible, whether it's business or restaurants or medical or political or just whatever it is. Certainly corporate world, certainly the judiciary, and we've had a lot of judges on over the years. And
so how did it turn out? I remember I did one taping, and then I left, and you had a restaurateur in here, and you had all these dishes spread out on the table. Did you get to eat some of that?
No, the crew did, though.
Oh, the crew did.
And I have to say, we couldn't do this without the volunteer crew, really. We get a little seed money from Thomson Reuters and from U.S. Federal Credit Union in terms of enabling me, as you can see right there, to buy jackets and to have a party for the volunteers each year. But we have 3 young men from MCTC here who are, and I couldn't do it without them. And Mary Dalkey.
You've had women here too,
Mary
you?
Dalkey, who's been really our foundation, has been with us a decade now, and has trained most of these people. And
How did you teach there, Alan? Right?
MCTC.
Right. How did the volunteers? Do they cross over with the teaching? Are they independent of that?
Well,
how does that work?
It's been a changing process, but the fact of the matter is that they have to serve, the students have to serve an internship before they graduate, or 2. And it used to be that they could come on here and I would solicit them in their freshman year to volunteer, and it's great for them to have on their resume that I'm fully conversant not only with cinema, which is where I'm teaching, but with certainly television, and they get a job a lot faster if they're conversant with television. The rules have changed somewhat, so they only get credit now in the 2nd semester of their 2nd year. But the fact of the matter is, the Braun brothers and Raven Miller, no relation, have been foundational, and some of the others who are not here today who happen to be out shooting films. So
I've got a young media student coming from Norway, probably in February. I can bring him over here and show him how it works.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's one of the things you have.
And if we can keep them, we need volunteers badly.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things you've mentored so many people over the years.
How many volunteers have you had over the years, Alan? Would you estimate?
I've never counted, but I would say we've had well over 100 to 150.
That's pretty amazing to give that level of experience. So we should say
be
serious about needing more volunteers. So if people
Absolutely.
who are listening are interested in getting into this or helping, the number and the email addresses on the rolling scroll below the screen there.
We lost Dwayne Brucehaber last year, and
Yeah.
Dwayne had been with us from the very beginning.
Mr. Audio.
And Mr. Audio, and a wonderful gardener. He was a champion gardener, and you know, time marches on. Those things happen. Some people have moved away, but fortunately, health has sustained me to reach this point anyway. We have Steve Francisco, who has taken some of the interviews, but Steve joined Sun Country about a year ago, and so he has been less available. I was trying to break him in as the ultimate co-host and then host, looking toward that day. And so at the moment, he takes it occasionally when he's not flying on a Friday, but yeah, we need another host.
here
So
I'll-
we're going to have to go to, you know, the two of you to host. When
Here I want to probe a little bit as to get to the underlying philosophy and idea behind access to democracy. I mean, I've referred to you as truly a patriot in the sense that I think Thomas Jefferson said, if you don't trust the people with the vote, you don't take it away from them, you educate them. And I've seen that in access to democracy. But I want to hear from you on this. What have you intended to accomplish with this show?
It's pretty much in the first book that I wrote. You can make a difference. And that's what I wanted to. I wanted to give at least the people in this area, in the Burnsville, Eagan, and we have about 100,000 people there, the opportunity to have a wide, expansive chance to listen to their representatives, to get to know their business people, and to offer something to the community. And that's what we have done. And I know from people stopping me, no matter where I am, that it's successful. You know, they don't know my name. You're the television guy. Okay, I'm the television guy. I'm in a supermarket one day, and a lady comes up to me, and she says, "I don't like those questions you asked to Congressman Klein." I said, "Well, I just want to find out where he stands on these things." We are in an airport in Houston, and there's a man opposite us in the waiting area, and he says, "Aren't you the guy that does that Access show?" And so you never know. And of course now we have a wonderful webmaster, Avi Mashar, and because of that, we are online. So all these interviews are available online forever. And we're on YouTube, so you can go to YouTube, and it's amazing that you'll hear from people in Germany or something like that.
Paul, I'm sure people have asked you about shows that
Oh
they've
yeah,
seen,
I've
right?
found out that I do a show, and I'm just and people say, "Oh yeah, that you've been on YouTube," and it comes
Right.
up and it shows that. But I want to ask you, access to democracy. Where'd you come up with that name? I mean, what's behind that?
I think I stole it from somebody.
So, but it describes what
It describes what we were trying to do with this program. Democracy being not just political, but democracy being all encompassing. I mean, from Thomson Reuters, we've had a half a dozen different executives on over the years, although you, Rick, have been here many times, and Paul, you've been here probably 36 times. And I don't think anybody has been here as much as our local senator, Jim Carlson, who's just a compendium of all kinds of information. And there are people like, at this point of this year, we are booked 2.5 months ahead because it's an election year. And in an election year now, unlike the beginning, where I had to call and scratch to convince people to come on the show, now they call and say, you know, can we get on the show before the election? Have you got an opening for us?
That's fantastic.
And I do, and we don't stand on our copyright. We give everybody who's on the show a DVD, say put it up on your website if you want, and a lot of them have done that. And we've done a lot of civic organizations, a lot of charities, and they seem to keep coming back, so I guess that's a good thing.
Thinking back, you've probably had tons of interesting experiences, funny ones, unexpected ones. Take us to some of the remarkable ones in any of the characteristics that, you know, made it so.
Well, it's funny, we had one 2 weeks ago right here, which we have never experienced. With all our new equipment and everything, suddenly it stopped recording. And we had 2 minutes when it was not recording in the middle of an interview. I think it was Jim Carlson's, I'm not sure. And the technical people from Eagan TV, who have been so helpful to us, actually took and put that together, minus the 2 minutes that we lost, and dovetailed it. Once in the old building, we had a tape snap. It was when we were using tape. The tape snapped. So we had to take a 15-minute hiatus, go back and try to recreate exactly the question we were on when the tape snapped. I mean, those have been some interesting experiences. We've never had a guest who walked off. We've had some guests who were kind of nervous and where I had to pull the questions out. There were guests where I felt I was doing the interview and they were sort of giving yes and no answers simply because of the nervousness. That's where the preparation comes in.
Have any guests surprised you and just something that comes unexpected or special through that process?
Yeah, I guess there have been some surprises. Nothing leaps to mind right away. I never know what either of you are going to say when you are guests on the show, so those are always surprises. But no, nothing that was like shocking that I can think of. People pretty much know the thrust of the show. They know what we're trying to do. And, you know, it may be somebody who has invented a new solar filament for solar lighting. Now, I know that that person wants to push what he's manufacturing. I don't want it to be an infomercial, so we try to tailor it around that. When I have restaurants like we've had Jensen's on several times, and we've had Andiamo on several times, and restaurateurs like that, their stories are fascinating. The Jensen family, who has been in restaurants here in Eagan since '95, but they go back years in the restaurant business. Ramon Ruiz of Andiamo, who was the executive chef for Buca and went all over the country setting up Buca restaurants, and then had the opportunity to come here to Eagan. And and he's Mexican.
Yeah, that's an interesting story. He's Latino, but runs one of the best Italian restaurants around.
And in 4 years, I really have relished his growth in 4 years, to the fact that he now has a second restaurant in Owatonna, and he just was very successful in the Steele County Fair. And, you know, it's great to think that you were a part of that to make something better. And we've had that opportunity a few times, and that's really exciting.
So this show originates in Eagan. Are you an Eagan booster? I mean, my impression, the state has got a statewide aspect to it. So how do you blend that Eagan and statewide Minnesota?
We are in Eagan, Sharon and I are in Eagan, basically because it was close to West Publishing, then Thomson West, and we just lucked out. Because Eagan, to me, is one of the best places in the world to live. It's accessible to highways, it's accessible to the airport, the lakes, the quality of life. The quality of life in the whole state of Minnesota is just wonderful. But, you know, we lucked into making the choice to come to Eagan. And yeah, I'm very proud of this city. We have, speaking of, for instance, politics, Pat Andreson, who is a very Republican, almost libertarian today, was a mayor here. I love her. We have had wonderful battles here. She and I go at it hammer and tongs. And in fact, I thought I'd be off the air once a few years ago, because the only sexist remark I ever made, I made to Pat.
We're not going to repeat
we're
that.
not
No, you're not going to repeat it.
Good.
We're not going to repeat it, but she turned bright red and colored and blushed. But it was said in jest and really out of affection. She ran a wonderful ship. Mike McGuire has come on to follow her. We have a wonderful tax base here, thanks to also Tom Hedges, who retired last
I
year.
think you skipped the mayor in there.
And, well, we had a couple mayors in there,
Yeah.
but
Now I'm going to bring up a point that I'm coming back. We won't repeat the section. But you're a little bit a captive of your generation, and you said you celebrated your second 40th birthday. But you're so contemporary. So how have you balanced that and be able to be so contemporary with the thrust of your show?
Yeah, look at that shirt. That's
Yeah,
not,
now that's
not-
contemporary.
That's a more like a 40-year-old shirt, not a 2 times 40.
Yeah.
Look at mine, it's dull.
You and me both, sir.
Yes.
well, thank you, Jaime's. But
Good to have sponsors, right?
speaking of Jaime's, Anthony Adler has been on probably 3 or 4 times. Anthony started out as a leather craftsman, and he expanded into antiques, and then he went into clothing, and just celebrated 10 years in his new location, and he's got one of the finest clothing stores any place. Quality merchandise.
So how do you stay contemporary? Let's get right back to that and not be distracted by the shirt.
Newspapers.
Newspapers.
I still read a minimum of 3 newspapers a day. I ask my students, how many of you read a newspaper? If I get one hand that goes up, it's a lot in a class of 20. But I read newspapers, and I also get a lot of material online in terms of, I have Al Jazeera, I have Haaretz, I have the Chicago Tribune, etc. And I tried to stay with the world, which certainly has moved tremendously in my lifetime. Try to stay with it. I've always had a progressive bent, so I think that has something to do with it.
I've noticed in all the descriptions when we ask about any of the people that you've interviewed, it's not just the name you're telling us about. You tell about the story of their life.
That's much more important to me.
And I think it's really interesting that you have that view. I think we need to pry a little into yours, if we may, just to find out. Tell us a little bit about the family. You said there were some in New York, and let's get into that a little.
Well, as I said in the factoids, I was born in New York,
What part?
and actually born in New York City.
Manhattan Island?
At New York Hospital, and lived there for the first few years of my life. And as I said, my father moved around a lot. I'm an only child. We lived in Harrisburg, we lived in Pittsburgh, we lived in Chicago, we lived in Minneapolis, we lived in Bayside, we lived in Patchogue, Long Island, we lived in St. Petersburg, Florida, we lived in Austin, Texas. And the next month, so I've had
What did your father do that brought him to all those places?
They were in the iron and steel business.
Okay.
My mother ironed and my father stole. But that's,
You're going to remember that one. How
I
about
can
you?
remember that one too.
he was a buyer for the Allied chain in housewares, china, and gifts.
Okay.
And every couple of years, there'd be a phone call, or he'd be called into the office, Phil, the store in Minneapolis is in trouble. We want you to go and remake the department. And so we moved constantly.
So he's a bit of a troubleshooter then, huh?
Yeah, pretty much. Fortunately, as an only child, I was schizophrenic, so I had myself to play with. But other than that,
You're going for the Comedy Channel audition
Yeah.
today, aren't you? And then, okay, take us through only child, school. Where'd you?
Syracuse. I got
Okay.
accepted to Syracuse. I have to say, neither of my parents went to college. They
okay.
always said that I would go to college. It was just one of those things that was
Did you
accepted.
believe that, or was that a far-off dream for you?
I believed, particularly with my mother, who was my mother who fought when she was fired from her hospital at 82 because they replaced her with a computer. I always believed that I would, but they didn't know too much about college. They just knew that they wanted me to go, and had a family full of doctors, so I knew I didn't want to do that because just was not comfortable for me, and ended up in law school at Syracuse, where I had really, my undergraduate days at Syracuse were just marvelous. Some of the best years of my life were my undergraduate days at Syracuse. That was the days of hazing, that was the days of pledging fraternities and going on pledge trips in the middle of the night, things that are not politically correct today. But it was a wonderful experience, and then it was just a natural.
That was
for
back
me.
when they would have a company town. There was industries that dominated a particular area.
We had Jimmy Brown.
Yeah,
He was
Right,
our
he
company.
was
Jim Brown, yes.
That's right.
He was
a
our
big
company
Syracuse
then.
guy.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, Syracuse also had IBM facilities for quite a while, didn't they?
And the Carrier Corporation
Yeah.
is there, and
Yeah.
and I worked during not my undergraduate days, but in my law school days. My family fell on hard times, and I had to get a job and work through law school, which probably stood me in good stead. And,
Where did you go to law school?
At Syracuse.
Oh, Syracuse.
Yeah,
Okay.
which just opened a magnificent new building, Deneen Hall, a couple of weeks ago that is so far removed from what I had when I was there. But and then I practiced law on Long Island for a while, and ultimately, at a time when my life was really crumbling, I came to West in '85 and started as a, what do they call me, principal attorney editor, which is a title with no meaning at all. But
Actually,
Did you meet Sharon in New York or
in New York,
Okay.
yeah, as a youngster, and can we see if we can find Sharon in the control room and maybe show the world what she looks like if she's in there.
And if you
That's,
can't get her right away, we're going to get her
Yeah.
here to help cut
In
the
a-
cake,
in
right?
In about 5 minutes, we're going to get her in to cut the cake.
In any event, as a kid, I had been a bowler, and when I was 12, 13, the deal was if you go to the bowling alley and set pins, because we had pin boys in those days, for 2 hours you could bowl for free. So then in college, I was on my fraternity bowling team. And when I was divorced, and at the time I started with West, and I spotted Sharon on the other side of a room, and I asked one of the people, who is that young woman there? And he said, she's a bowler. And the next week I signed up for the bowling league. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Right.
But we're going to celebrate our 18th wedding anniversary next week, although we've been together 25 years, and it really has been the best 25 years of my life. She is the rational person. She is the person who will take my excessiveness and rein it in, which is really important.
Well, I've referred to Sharon as an enabler. I mean, you get, and if I would describe the two of you, is that the two of you together, the sum is greater than the whole of the parts. So what is it about Sharon and your relationship? She enables you to do all the things you do.
Because if I'm busy preparing for shows and things like that, I leave her alone. So that she has a lot of time to develop a life, and she has really developed an interesting life here, where she's active in organizations and things like that, and of course, and co-produces the show here with us, and it's been, you know.
And she's the one that takes the still pictures, and you have a marvelous scrapbook of all the pictures of all
Hundreds
the
and
guests,
hundreds
right?
of, we're on our 4th scrapbook now.
And did it go back to the almost the beginning?
Not the
Probably
very
you didn't know
beginning,
what
but
you were,
right. We didn't know what we were getting
right.
into.
When did you actually know that you were going to have a show that you wanted to sustain?
Well, it started one a month. And then there were more people as we developed, and it became one every other week. And then it developed 2 every other week, and now what we normally do is 3 every other week, half hours. But we have special shows like this, which go an hour. In 2 weeks, we're going to have 2 hours or 2.5 hours of all the political candidates running in Eagan for political office. They're all going to come in, and we're going to give them each an individual shot as to why they should be elected to council.
So that's what a great thing for the voters, right?
But I'm a historian. I love history. And I think you interviewed Tim Pawlenty when he was, wet behind the ears, running for the city council, and you've Klobuchar when she's a candidate. Where is this going to be preserved? I mean, we're human. We have, but history. You've been a chronicler of so much history. What's going to happen to it?
Fortunately, last year, the Dakota County Historical Society agreed to relieve a large area of space in my home and take 1,200 of our interviews.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And they have now cataloged them, and I don't think they've made a public announcement yet, although I am waiting.
They have now.
And, and Lynn Gruber, who was here just a few weeks ago, have set it up as a research facility and an educational facility for students, so that, or if there's a politician who's running against a particular congressman, say, he wants to find out what that congressman had to say 12 years ago when he was on this show, they can go there and look at the
Opposition
tapes.
research.
And and that's if there's a legacy to be had, that's the legacy, and so I'm very pleased with that.
But I mean, it'd be interesting, and you develop over the period of time. I mean, I noticed that with my own self on the court, and so for somebody who's studying a person like Pawlenty, or to see how they have evolved and matured in their service to the public, what a resource that must be.
Hugely.
I just want to point out to my hosts that they should keep their eye on the clock.
I've got the clock.
Okay.
No problem.
All right.
I'm not even.
And I've got
looking
his
at it.
back. You're the guest.
That when I said in 5 more minutes we might want to have Sharon come in, I was cognizant of that. He's always trying to tinker with us, Paul. He just can't.
I know.
Can't take the host out of him.
But this is one other thing about your shows, and I mean, you're pointing it out here. They go so fast. As a guest on your show, I mean,
it's over before it begins.
Inevitably, that's what the guests say. It's a half hour already, and or as Franken did 2 years ago, let's go another half hour, which was, fortunate we were able to accommodate that. And Amy Klobuchar was on her way to Congress last year, to the Senate last year, and she said, "I just don't know how we're going to squeeze this in." We came in and did a special 15 minutes with Amy Klobuchar as she was ready to leave for the airport, just to be able to present her to the people, and she was good enough to do that. So
That's fantastic. I mean, I think it's been a great service to the people of the area, and I'm surprised too the number of people, first before the YouTube phenomenon, that would come up and say, I saw you on that show, and I think, boy, you don't sleep very well at night, do you? Thinking they're watching the show, but they get hooked on it, and now with YouTube, it's even broader, and people
we've
are
been
watching it all the
very
time.
lucky with a great following, and the city puts the shows on frequently, and now they are on the website forever, and they're on YouTube, and now we have the Historical Society, so it really, really has been very, very something I'm really grateful for.
We're almost going to get to the cake cutting. I know you're hungry, you like sugar and things like that, but this is from all of us, and on behalf of all the viewers who have watched your 1,600 shows from time to time, whichever ones they found. It's a little gift to say thank you for being the host with the most that brings really the democracy of the city, the county, the state, the federal government, right to people, because either the things, and in reverse order, are farthest away from people that they don't think that they have any influence or understanding about. And that's why, the more local it gets, the more they feel like they're part of it. But you bring those ones that are farther away closer to them, and that's a remarkable
What we
thing.
Thank you, thank you. And this is totally unexpected.
You're going to
If it-
open that, aren't
If
you?
it's from viewers, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't ticking.
No.
That's-
We went through the metal detector. You're going to be safe, but you're not
okay.
going to be blowing it around at Sharon, I'll tell you.
By the way, in my days with West Publishing, I had some really interesting, we have to have a program on that sometime.
That would be an interesting program.
A newsletter I did for you that won 2 Emmy Awards, and a challenge that we had
It's well wrapped.
with another publisher, which ensured that we were forever going to keep the United States Code as a property of ours.
Alan was,
Oh my God,
please take the
Oh.
plastic.
that is beautiful.
Marvelous. Yes.
It's a microphone, it's a crystal microphone.
I'll have to say that Alan, in his time working at the company, was a fantastic and challenging employee all at once, but he brought clarity and a lot of great
Now,
benefit.
isn't that
This,
something?
this is absolutely beautiful. I am absolutely overwhelmed.
Well, there's,
Did you have microphones like that when you started?
We use bullhorns.
Bullhorns.
it seemed somewhat fitting to be able to have you
That-
take that as a token from all the people that are on the other end of the sound.
That
and
is
listening to
absolutely
the- listening to the
overwhelming.
microphone.
And,
You can put there. You put it so we can, and show that it's got a.
Let's see, we've got a little inscription
Yes.
here. It says, Alan Miller hosts Access to Democracy on his 80th birthday from your friends at Thomson Reuters and all the others. So there we have it.
Really?
We'll take,
what's
we
that
haven't
book?
quite talked
Yeah.
about this book yet. We'll have to get to that one while we invite Sharon in at this point, because I think it's cake time.
Sir, this
think
is
we
your
can
show.
get her?
Would you excuse me to go out if she's not coming in? I can escort her.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay,
take your mic off.
I got to take my mic off. Okay.
Is she running for the hills?
I don't know. She might.
Alan, while Paul's doing that, we've got this other book. So this is your second, and I believe, if I'm not giving secrets out, you're working almost at the end of your third.
Well, I've completed the early drafts of my novel,
Yep.
and now I am in the very interesting stage of having it rejected by agents. So
It's a requisite process to get it
uh,
published, right? So this is
number
book
two.
number 2.
Yeah,
Number 3 we'll show the next time. You want to talk about Toby?
Toby was really just a magnificent, wonderful companion. 13 years he was with us, a rescue. We only have rescues. We're on our third now. We just got her about 6 weeks ago, another Springer rescue, and we have both been dog people, and we just love the companionship that a dog really brings to the household.
Toby was a wonderful dog. I had the pleasure of being at your house several times for the parties, and
Yeah.
Toby was there. Ah, there she is.
There she is.
You did something that I have been unable to do, which is to get Sharon on camera.
Now, seriously, I'm not going to make Sharon cut the cake, because I'm going to cut it for you, because you're part of the guest cadre now, because you're responsible for helping keep him together as
Why don't you just put that
co-producer.
on your.
I have to say, I've had a wonderful relationship
I'll lean over.
with Thomson Reuters since I retired from Thomson Reuters. While I was here, I used to drive the executives crazy.
I want it to be known, though, that I wasn't here then.
No, you weren't.
I respect people that challenge people.
Yes.
And that's what I find fascinating. I think you do that. You and I have different political views, but we talk, we understand, we listen, we learn, and challenging is a good thing. And I think we would have had a fine work.
Here's something that I point out to young people, is that about facts, issues, and policies. They said, it's really good to talk to people who come and have different opinions than yours. But if they choose their own facts, cherry pick the facts to do a predetermined
Thank you,
opinion,
sir.
they aren't worth the time. And that's one of the things that you do, is that you pick people, is that they come to different conclusions, but you make sure we're going from the same factual base. And I think that is one of the keys that makes this show so interesting.
It's one of the things that we're missing today in our political life. People have become so partisan and closed their minds that they really can't see anybody else's viewpoint.
How do we get back to a point where you can have the opposing views, understand the issues, and not have it be this going off into one deep end or the other?
Cherry picking facts one side or the other. you
Right,
know?
just a robust, full circle discussion. Are we ever going to get back to that?
I am in fear that we are so far removed from that we may be painting ourselves into a corner.
So what-
Volunteers, you came on the right day. This cake looks great, and I'm going to take a piece right now.
Please do, but
I gotta go. I'm gonna
Go ahead.
This is your show.
No, go
We
ahead.
have Sharon here. You could ask her a couple of questions. How does she go about enabling Ellen to do this marvelous show?
I think you can go ahead and ask. I was pleased that Sharon agreed to come and sit down, and I'm not going to put her on the spot.
This is a first. This is an absolute first.
Well,
Although she is not reticent at home.
That's different.
She's the boss. Understand that.
Is there any argument about who's the boss at home, Sharon?
No. I do what I'm told.
And that's why you live to 80.
That's it.
That's right.
Please have
But
some
I have to
cake.
say,
But if you experience, you're co-host, co-producer of the show, have you experienced any unique or difficult challenges in putting it on?
No, not too much. No, because he does most of the work.
Oh,
He does it.
How, is there a way, if you could
This-
press a button and get us back to this robust, a bipartisan discussion about something, what button would you press? How,
I would-
forget everything
I
that
would
we are,
press
how
the button on humanities and social sciences. And I think as we have moved so rapidly forward into this IT world, that we're leaving that behind and we're losing some of that. Students who don't know history, which is why history keeps repeating itself. Students who don't know the background of their government, who don't know. Ask people which side the Nazis were on in college students in World War II.
So you think there's too
And-
much technology, it's too focused, and we're
I don't
we've
think
lost the
there's
big
too much.
picture?
I think that we have overemphasized the technology
Okay.
and we have punished. I would require students to read a newspaper every day if I had that power. I would require them to be up on history. I would require them to be tested on the background of this country. 80% of the people don't know the name of the vice president in this country. A statistic that I read recently. That's really appalling. And the other 20% are Joe Biden's family. So, I mean, it's...
But this is one of the things I learned in China when I was teaching there. This tendency where you put people and get them to think in silos. And historically in our country, the advantage has been this broader educational thinking outside the envelope, teaching people to read, to think, to write, and to analyze. I think you're getting at a point that underlies some of the greatness of this country, and I think you're right to fear that it may be being lost.
The other interesting thing I heard is to the point of newspapers. I share your passion for reading paper, and I say anybody that takes the Wall Street Journal should have to read the New York Times. Anybody that reads the New York Times should have to read the Wall Street Journal.
Absolutely.
Read them both, and you don't have to buy into the whole thing, but understand, seek to understand.
Yes, you have to recognize that there is another viewpoint other than your own, and hopefully you can reach a dialogue. What we are not doing today is we're driven into our partisan corners where, if I watch only MSNBC, I'm going to be only viewing the left. And when I switch over to Fox News and I see Hannity and O'Reilly and some others that make me cringe because I disagree with them generally in the way they present things. Journalism is different today also. I mean, I started as a journalist. I started as a journalism major. And it's become, in and of itself, more partisan than really fact producing.
So what are the discussions like at home? I mean, do you disagree, the two of you?
No,
Do you have dialogue on issues?
no, we agree.
Our philosophy is pretty much the same, but I don't shout at the television set.
Or she talks back to the television?
Oh yeah, Sharon will be arguing with
Oh, you
very
do too sometimes.
very vocally.
My wife is the same way, and it really bothers me. I mean, who are you talking to? And she's talking back to the radio or the TV. You do that, do you?
Well, that's why
It
we
goes
get
back to
along.
the early days when you stood in front of the TV and said, pick, the romper room needed to pick you. They wanted you to yell at the TV to say, pick Rick from Niceville.
We're getting
Anyway,
we're getting
We're going to
from
have
the
to wrap it
control
up,
room.
'cause- and like most guests, we just got started.
Just got started.
80 more years coming up. Alan,
you.
thank you for the great service of Access to Democracy.
thank the both
with
of
all
you
the shows,
for coming in and
everything that
doing
you've done
this.
to
This is-
bring government to the people so they understand. Thank you. And
I
thanks
really
for
appreciate
letting
it.
Paul and I host.
Thank you. And thanks, Sharon. I mean, thank you for coming on and just joining us.
Yes, thanks.